A diplomatic reset is underway. Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed Syria's newly installed President Ahmed Al-Sharaa to the Kremlin. In remarks steeped in continuity and optimism, Putin framed the visit as a renewal of a long-standing bond. He said a special relationship has developed between our countries for many decades. We have been maintaining diplomatic relations for over 80 years, the leader underscored, pointing back to ties dating from Soviet-era alliances. He reaffirmed Russia's self-stated mission of serving the interests of the Syrian people, irrespective of shifting political winds, and emphasized the necessity of national consolidation through elections. Al-Sharaa, for his part, leaned into that shared history. He referenced historic ties with Russia and underscored the expectation that Moscow would play an influential role in shaping Syria's political future. I reiterate what you have mentioned of historic ties between Russia and Syria. We are trying to introduce the new Syria to the whole world. We want to rebuild our strategic and political ties, and most of all, the Federation of Russia. In the corridors of diplomacy, only so much is left unsaid. According to the Kremlin, discussions would extend to the fate of Russian military installations in Syria, Hmeimim and Tartus among them, alongside renegotiated energy and investment deals. I think all deals conventions signed between the two, including the bases in Hmeimim and Tartus, need to be revised and resigned with the new leadership on new grounds, one official observed. Analysts watching closely view these developments through dual lenses. On one hand, Syria stands to benefit from the influx of Russian investment and the political weight Moscow still carries as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. On the other hand, Russia treats Syria as a critical foothold in the Middle East, deploying diplomatic heft to preserve influence in an era of reduced reach elsewhere. One government official framed the changing relationship as almost overdue. What happened recently in Syria is Syria's internal matter. And now here you have the president arriving and improving ties. We are happy and hope all issues considered difficult will be resolved. Still, a particularly thorny question looms, that of asylum given to Bashar al-Assad, who secured refuge in Russia after being deposed. Maintaining a constructive relationship with Damascus now requires Moscow and Damascus to navigate the question of justice, loyalty, and leverage in unison. Russia's strategic presence in Syria is built on its airbase at Hmeimim and its naval facility in Tartus. These are its only military installations outside its own borders. Under the Assad regime, they served as projection points for Kremlin influence across the region. But following Assad's removal, Russia's grip weakened. There have been reports of forced withdrawals and naval asset departures from Tartus. Satellite imagery has shown reduced naval presence in the port, fueling speculation Moscow is rethinking its commitment. That said, publicly, Russia insists it remains on the ground in Syria and actively engages with Damascus about the future of its bases. Meanwhile, some independent analysts warn of an existential risk to Moscow's status in the Middle East, arguing that losing those installations would substantially diminish Russia's regional leverage. Syria's new leadership is approaching negotiations with caution and ambition. The transitional government has signalled openness to retaining Russian bases if it is profitable for the Republic, as Interim Defence Minister Muhaf Abu Kasra said. Others have echoed that sentiment, stating the desire to renegotiate leases under fresh terms. Still, the outcome is far from certain. Some reports suggest that Russian bases have already been partially taken over by local rebel forces affiliated with Al-Sharaa's movement. Others see a tactical withdrawal, perhaps trading outright control for long-term access via revamped agreements. Complicating matters further, hostile actions have resumed. In 2025, militants reportedly attacked the Hmeimim airbase, killing 2 persons affiliated with Russian or Syrian forces. The incident underscores that even with high diplomacy, the security environment remains volatile. Thus, as Syria and Russia sit down again, they must confront a delicate balance. Moscow wants to maintain strategic depth. Damascus wants sovereign dignity. For both, the stakes are more than military, they are symbolic. Al-Sharaa's rise is remarkable, not just for his military success, but for how his past continues to reconfigure global perceptions of Syria. As a former militant commander who once ran an Islamist faction with links to Al-Qaeda, he has spent months recasting his image as a statesman. We are trying to introduce the new Syria to the whole world, he declared, asserting a break from some of Syria's most infamous associations. Western media and analysts remain cautious. Coverage of his UN address in September 2025 highlighted the transformation. A man once pursued by security forces now might speak for his country. Skeptics question whether change is real or cosmetic. Meanwhile, supporters argue that the shift is necessary and potentially stabilizing. In diplomatic developments, President Donald Trump met Al-Sharaa in Riyadh in May 2025, signaling US willingness to engage. During that meeting, Trump announced the lifting of sanctions on Syria. The meeting served as a geopolitical inflection point, elevating Al-Sharaa's legitimacy on the international stage. Despite his militant past, several Gulf states have warmed up to him, particularly Saudi Arabia. Some analysts view this as part of a larger reordering in the Arab world, one that distances regional power from Iran-backed models of political Islam. Still, not all parties are convinced. The European Parliament, for instance, has pointed out that Al-Sharaa once led Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, designated by the EU, US and UN as a terrorist organization. His leadership remains a subject of contention and of careful redefinition. For Russia, the visit by President Al-Sharaa is both opportunity and risk. Putin's rhetoric spoke to years of friendly relations, but as Syria's government restructures itself, Moscow must decide whether its status as patron continues or is reduced to a transactional role. Russia still needs Syria for access to the Mediterranean, for influence in the Levant, for projection in the Middle East. But its capacity to maintain a muscular presence is constrained by challenges elsewhere, including its extended involvement in Ukraine. The Kremlin cannot afford to be too heavy-handed. Doing so might alienate a Syrian government whose legitimacy is under close international scrutiny. The request for base renegotiation signals Damascus may be willing to pay for sovereignty, whereas Moscow, accustomed to the terms of power under Assad, now finds itself navigating a new landscape. The meeting between Putin and Al-Sharaa represents both continuity and rupture. It is continuity because the symbolism is rooted in decades-old alliances, in base agreements, in economic pacts and energy deals. It is rupture because the actors have changed, the legitimacy is contested, and the power dynamics are less settled. A special relationship for many decades, over 80 years, established in the most difficult times for Russia in 1944. That's Putin invoking memory, legitimacy, and a claim to permanence. We are trying to introduce the new Syria, rebuild our strategic and political ties with all major and regional powers, and most of all the Federation of Russia. Is Al-Sharaa staking this transition on reasserting continuity even as he breaks from the past? But the true question is how the new Syria will allow Russia's presence moving forward. Will it be an alliance of equals or a renewed patron-client arrangement? Will Al-Sharaa hold to sovereign demands, or will he lean too heavily on Moscow's leverage? As that question dissolves into negotiations, several variables loom: the structure of new treaties over military bases, Russian willingness to give ground on terms Syrian control of security in formerly pro-Assad zones, international acceptance of Al-Sharaa's government, the fate of Assad still residing in Russia under asylum, the balance of foreign influence, Russian, Iranian, Western, in post-Assad Syria. For now, the two capitals, Moscow and Damascus, are watching, assessing and repositioning. Whether their renewed friendship will evolve into a stable political partnership or fracture under tension depends on how they negotiate both power and memory in this new era.